Louis Simmons steps onto the Iridian homeworld, his muscular frame barely contained by his formal diplomatic attire. The reptilian features of the assembled Iridian welcoming party contort in what he assumes is disgust, their scaly skin glistening under the harsh light of twin suns. As Earth's chosen envoy for these crucial trade negotiations, Louis knows the stakes are high. Humanity's future in interstellar commerce hangs in the balance. The grand negotiation chamber looms before him, a cavernous space hewn from living rock. Louis's gaze sweeps across the room, taking in the intricate carvings depicting Iridian history. His attention snaps to a small figure struggling under the weight of data pads stacked precariously in her arms. Without hesitation, Louis strides forward. "Let me help you with those," he offers, reaching out to steady the teetering stack. His shirt strains against his broad shoulders as he moves, revealing the impressive physique beneath. The Iridian female assistant freezes, her typically stoic expression faltering. Her large reptilian eyes widen, fixating on Louis's form. For a moment, the chamber falls silent. Ambassador Zork, the leader of the Iridian delegation, bristles visibly. His voice cuts through the tension like a whip crack. "What is the meaning of this? Remove this human at once." Louis steps back, confusion etched across his features. "I apologize, Ambassador. I meant no offense. I was simply trying to assist." Zork's scales flush a deep crimson. "Offense? You dare speak of offense while violating our most sacred customs? Physical contact between castes is strictly forbidden." The gravity of his misstep hits Louis like a punch to the gut. He's jeopardized years of careful diplomatic maneuvering with a single, well-intentioned gesture. As he scrambles to formulate a response, an unexpected voice breaks through the chaos. "Ambassador, please." It's the female assistant, her voice trembling but determined. "The human diplomat meant no harm. This is clearly a cultural misunderstanding." Zork whirls on her, scales rippling with fury. "Mina, you dare speak out of turn?" Louis seizes the opening. "Ambassador Zork, please allow me to apologize for my ignorance. I propose a compromise. I will gladly adhere to your customs for the duration of these negotiations. Perhaps this incident can serve as a learning opportunity for both our species." As Louis speaks, he notices Mina stealing glances in his direction. The initial shock in her eyes has transformed into something else. Curiosity, perhaps even admiration. It's a stark contrast to the thinly veiled hostility radiating from the rest of the Iridian delegation. Tension crackles through the chamber. The future of human-Iridian relations teeters on a knife's edge. Louis stands tall, acutely aware that his every move is being scrutinized. He's opened an unexpected rift in the Iridian ranks, and now he must navigate this treacherous new landscape with utmost care. As Ambassador Zork deliberates, Louis catches Mina's eye once more. There's an unspoken connection forming, a spark of mutual interest that defies the rigid norms of Iridian society. It's a complication Louis never anticipated, one that could either doom the negotiations or lead to an unprecedented breakthrough in interspecies relations. With a deep breath, Louis prepares to make his case. The trade negotiations haven't even officially begun, and already he's facing the challenge of a lifetime. But as he stands before the Iridian delegation, Louis knows one thing for certain. Humanity's reputation for adaptability is about to be put to the ultimate test. The tension in the chamber slowly dissipated as Ambassador Zork's scales faded from crimson to their usual muted green. He fixed Louis with a hard stare, then spoke with measured words. "Very well, human. We will continue these negotiations, but under strict conditions. You will be assigned a cultural liaison to prevent further misunderstandings." Louis nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Ambassador. I appreciate your willingness to move forward." To Louis's surprise, Zork's gaze shifted to the female assistant. "Mina, you will serve as the human's guide. Your intervention has proven you capable of handling this delicate situation." Mina's eyes widened, but she quickly composed herself. "Yes, Ambassador. I will ensure the human adheres to our customs." As the delegation dispersed, Louis approached Mina. "Thank you for speaking up earlier. I'm Louis Simmons." "Mina," she replied, her voice cool but not unfriendly. "We begin tomorrow at first light. Do not be late." Over the next few days, Lewis found himself immersed in a crash course on Iridian culture. Mina proved to be a stern but patient teacher, guiding him through the intricacies of their social norms and customs. "Remember," Mina instructed as they walked through the bustling streets of the Iridian capital, "eye contact with higher castes is considered a challenge. Keep your gaze lowered when addressing the ambassador." Louis nodded, absorbing every detail. He couldn't help but notice Mina's gaze lingering on him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her eyes traced the contours of his muscular frame, a flicker of curiosity in their reptilian depths. As they turned a corner, they encountered a group of Iridians holding signs with anti-human slogans. The protesters hissed and spat as Louis approached. "Ignore them," Mina whispered. "We'll take another route." Her words were cut short as a heavy object sailed through the air, aimed directly at Louis's head. Without hesitation, he pivoted, shielding Mina with his body. The projectile struck his back with a dull thud, and Louis winced but remained standing. "Louis!" Mina exclaimed, her usual stoic demeanor cracking. "You're injured. We must tend to this immediately." She led him to a nearby medical facility, ushering him into a private room. "Remove your shirt," Mina instructed, her voice professional but tinged with concern. Louis complied, revealing his broad, muscular back. Mina's breath caught as she examined the angry bruise forming on his skin. She reached for a jar of healing salve, her cool hands trembling slightly as she applied it to his injury. "Your skin is so warm," Mina murmured, her fingers lingering on his muscled shoulders. Louis turned, their faces suddenly close. He could feel the heat radiating from Mina's typically cool skin, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. The moment shattered as the door burst open. Ambassador Zork stormed in, his scales flushing crimson once more. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, eyes narrowing at the scene before him. Mina jumped back, her professional mask slipping back into place. "Ambassador, I was merely tending to the human's injury. There was an incident with protesters." Zork cut her off with a sharp gesture. "Mina, you are dismissed. Return to your duties immediately." As Mina hesitated at the door, her eyes met Louis'. In that brief moment, he saw a flicker of something more than professional concern, a longing that mirrored his own growing feelings. Zork turned his attention to Louis, who had hastily put his shirt back on. "Human," he growled, "let me make myself clear. Any further incidents will result in your immediate expulsion from our planet. These negotiations hang by a thread. Do not test my patience further." As the ambassador stormed out, Louis sank into a chair, the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. He had come here to secure a trade deal vital for humanity's future in the galactic community. Now he found himself caught in a web of political intrigue and forbidden attraction. Outside the medical facility, whispers spread through the city. The human diplomat who had shielded a Iridian from harm. The selfless act that defied their preconceptions. Among the younger Iridians, a current of change began to stir. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the grand negotiation chamber, Ambassador Zork huddled with a group of hooded figures. "The human must be removed," he hissed, "by any means necessary. Our way of life depends on it." As night fell on the Iridian capital, Louis stood at the window of his quarters, gazing at the alien skyline. The twin moons cast an eerie glow over the city, illuminating the challenges that lay ahead. He thought of Mina, of the trade negotiations, of the forces aligning against him. Tomorrow would bring new trials, new dangers. But for now, in the quiet of the night, Louis allowed himself a moment to breathe, to gather his strength for the battles to come. As the first rays of dawn broke over the Iridian capital, Louis found himself standing before a gleaming crystal edifice. The building, with its twisting spires and iridescent surfaces, housed the cultural exchange event organized by the younger Iridian officials. Louis straightened his formal attire, acutely aware of the increased scrutiny he faced in the wake of his confrontation with Ambassador Zork. Inside, the air hummed with excitement. Iridians of various castes mingled, their scales shimmering in the soft light. Louis caught sight of Mina across the room, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment before she looked away, her expression unreadable. A young Iridian official approached Lewis, his scales a vibrant blue. "Human diplomat, we are honored by your presence. Would you be willing to demonstrate some human customs for our guest?" Lewis nodded, seizing the opportunity to build alliances with the progressive faction. "Of course, I'd be happy to share a bit of Earth culture with you all." He began with a simple handshake, explaining its significance in human greetings. The Iridians watched with fascination, some even attempting the gesture among themselves, their clawed hands awkwardly clasping each other. As the demonstration progressed, Louis noticed a massive stone object in the corner of the room. It resembled an ancient Earth obelisk covered in intricate Iridian glyphs. The blue-scaled official followed Lewis's gaze. "Ah, that is the Pillar of Ancestors. It's a sacred artifact, said to weigh as much as 10 Iridians. Perhaps you'd like to try moving it?" Louis approached the pillar, aware of the eyes upon him. He placed his hands on the cool stone, feeling its weight. With a deep breath, he tensed his muscles and lifted. The pillar rose smoothly as if it were made of foam rather than dense rock. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Louis held the pillar aloft for a moment before gently setting it down. When he turned, he saw Mina staring at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and something else, something that made his heart race. As the event wound down, Mina approached Louis. "We need to discuss some diplomatic matters," she said, her voice low. "Follow me." She led him through winding corridors and out into a secluded garden. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, their bioluminescent petals casting a soft glow in the gathering twilight. "That was impressive," Mina said, her eyes roaming over Louis's form. "I've never seen anything like it." Louis felt a flush creeping up his neck. "Thank you. Human physiology is quite different from Iridian, it seems." Mina took a step closer. "Yes, I've noticed. I'm curious. How do humans—" She paused, searching for words. "How do your mating practices differ from ours?" Louis blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in conversation. "Well, that's a complex topic. In general, humans form pair bonds based on mutual attraction and compatibility. Physical affection plays a significant role in—" His explanation was cut short by a harsh voice. "What is the meaning of this?" They turned to see Zex, a Iridian male with deep green scales, standing at the garden's entrance. His eyes narrowed as he looked between Louis and Mina. "Zex," Mina said, her voice tight, "we were discussing diplomatic matters." Zex snorted, a sound like steam escaping a valve. "I'm sure. Human?" He spat the word like a curse. "I challenge you to Kreztak, the contest of worth." Louis hesitated, aware of the diplomatic tightrope he walked. Refusing could be seen as an insult, but accepting might escalate tensions further. He looked at Mina, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "I accept your challenge," Louis said, squaring his shoulders. Word of the contest spread like wildfire. By the time they reached the public arena, a sizable crowd had gathered. Louis stood in the center, the harsh lights illuminating his muscular frame. Across from him, Zex paced like a caged predator. The first trial, Strength, began with a test of lifting prowess. Lewis's earlier display with the Pillar of Ancestors served him well, and he handily outperformed Zex, earning grudging nods of approval from the Iridian spectators. The agility trial proved more challenging. Louis found himself face-to-face with an obstacle course that seemed designed specifically to exploit the differences between human and Iridian physiology. He pushed his body to its limits, twisting and contorting in ways he never thought possible. In the end, he matched Zex's performance, but just barely. As they prepared for the final trial, Endurance, Louis caught sight of Ambassador Zork in the crowd, his scales flushed with anger. The stakes of this contest, Louis realized, extended far beyond a simple rivalry. The Endurance trial took place in a transparent chamber at the center of the arena. As Louis and Zex entered, he felt the temperature begin to rise. Sweat beaded on his skin as the heat intensified. Across from him, Zex stood tall, confidence radiating from every scale. Minutes ticked by, feeling like hours. Louis drew on every ounce of his military training, controlling his breathing and focusing his mind. The temperature continued to climb, Louis's vision began to blur, his muscles screaming for relief. A thud drew his attention. Zex had collapsed, his scales pale and lifeless. Without hesitation, Louis grabbed his rival and dragged him towards the chamber's exit. The door hissed open, and cool air rushed in. As medical personnel swarmed around them, Louis became aware of the crowd's reaction. What had begun as shocked silence transformed into a growing murmur of approval. He saw Mina pushing through the throng, her face a mix of concern and something more, admiration, perhaps even affection. She reached him, her cool hands grasping his arms. "Louis, are you all right?" Before he could respond, Mina pulled him into an embrace. The crowd fell silent once more, the taboo of intercaste contact hanging heavy in the air. Ambassador Zork's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "This is an outrage. The human must be expelled immediately for this blatant violation of our sacred customs." But another voice rang out, firm and authoritative. A senior member of the Iridian Council stepped forward, her ornate robes marking her high status. "Ambassador Zork, you overstep," she said. "This human has demonstrated not only great physical prowess, but also compassion and honor. I propose a special cultural exchange program to foster understanding between our species." She turned to Louis and Mina. "You two will work together to bridge the gap between humans and Iridians. This is an opportunity for growth and change." As the crowd buzzed with excitement, Louis met Mina's eyes. The challenge ahead was immense, but in that moment, facing it together seemed not just possible, but inevitable. In the shadows of the arena, Ambassador Zork's scales darkened with rage. This was a long way to go. As Louis and Mina stood at the center of a growing storm of change, the true battle for the future of human-Iridian relations was just beginning. But as Louis met Mina's gaze, he knew they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. In the days that followed, the Iridian capital buzzed with activity. The announcement of the new cultural exchange program sent ripples through both human and Iridian societies. Louis and Mina found themselves at the center of it all, thrust into a whirlwind of meetings, planning sessions, and public appearances. Their first major event was a demonstration of human physical capabilities. Louis stood before a packed auditorium, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He began with feats of strength, lifting weights that left the Iridian audience gasping in awe. Next came displays of agility and flexibility, with Louis performing acrobatic moves that seemed to defy the expectations of Iridian physiology. As the demonstration neared its end, Louis decided to introduce something entirely foreign to Iridian culture: dancing. He stepped to the center of the stage and began to move to the rhythm of earth music playing through the speakers. The Iridians watched, transfixed by the fluid motions of his body. "And now," Louis announced, his voice carrying through the auditorium, "I'd like to invite Mina to join me in demonstrating a traditional earth dance called the waltz." Mina hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the stage. Louis took her hand, guiding her into the proper position. "Just follow my lead," he whispered. As they began to move, Louis could feel the tension in Mina's body. Her scales flickered with color, shifting from their usual pale blue to a deeper, more vibrant hue. He guided her through the steps, their bodies moving in sync. The audience watched in stunned silence as human and Iridian glided across the stage. Louis was acutely aware of Mina's cool skin against his, the way her body fit perfectly against his as they turned and swayed. He could hear her breath quicken, feel the rapid beating of her heart. As the music faded, they came to a stop, still holding each other close. For a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. Then, reality crashed back as the audience erupted into a cacophony of cheers and outraged shouts. Ambassador Zork's voice cut through the noise. "This is an outrage, a violation of our most sacred traditions." But many of the younger Iridians were on their feet, applauding. The blue-scaled official who had first approached Louis at the cultural exchange event spoke up. "This is precisely the kind of cultural exchange we need. We must learn from each other if we are to move forward as a society." As they left the stage, Louis noticed Mina's scales were still shifting colors rapidly. "Are you all right?" he asked, concerned. Mina nodded, avoiding his gaze. "It's just intense. I've never experienced anything like that before." Before Louis could respond, his communicator beeped. He excused himself and found a quiet corner to read the message. His blood ran cold as he decrypted the warning from Earth's Central Command. An extremist threat, potential attacks, and orders to remain vigilant while continuing his mission. The weight of his responsibilities settled heavily on his shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Louis and Mina worked closely together, organizing more events and demonstrations. Each interaction seemed to heighten the tension between them. Louis caught Mina studying him when she thought he wasn't looking, her gaze filled with a mixture of curiosity and something deeper. One evening, as they prepared for their next assignment, Mina approached Louis with a datapad. "I've been researching human physiology," she said, her voice low. "The differences between our species are significant." Louis swallowed hard, aware of the implications. "Mina, She cut him off. "We should focus on our mission. We're scheduled to visit the Desert Research Facility tomorrow." The journey to the facility began uneventfully. Louis and Mina sat in comfortable silence as their transport vehicle sped across the Iridian landscape. Suddenly, an alarm blared, and the vehicle lurched to a stop. "What's happening?" Louis asked, moving to check the vehicle's systems. Mina joined him, her clawed fingers dancing over the control panel. "It's a complete system failure. We're stranded." They stepped out into the harsh desert environment. The twin suns beat down mercilessly and the air shimmered with heat. Louis shielded his eyes, scanning the horizon. "The facility can't be too far. We should be able to make it on foot." Mina nodded, her expression grim. "We don't have much choice. But Louis, this desert is dangerous. We'll need to rely on each other to survive." As they set out across the unforgiving terrain, neither of them could have imagined the challenges that lay ahead, or how this journey would test not only their physical limits, but also the growing bond between them. As they crested another dune, the research facility finally came into view, a stark metallic structure against the shimmering horizon. Louis wiped the sweat from his brow, his shirt clinging to his muscular frame. "We made it," he said, his voice hoarse from the dry air. Mina nodded, her scales dulled by the desert dust. "Yes, but something's not right. Look at the security patrols." Louis squinted, noticing the increased activity around the perimeter. "You're right. This doesn't look like standard protocol." They crouched behind a rocky outcropping, observing the facility. After a few moments of careful consideration, Mina turned to Louis, her eyes gleaming with tenacity. "We need to get inside," she said. "If the extremists have taken control, we have to find out what they're planning." Louis nodded, his military training kicking in. "Agreed, but how do we get past their security?" Mina's scales rippled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I know Iridian architecture. There should be a hidden maintenance entrance on the eastern side. It's our best chance of getting in undetected." They circled the facility, keeping low and using the terrain for cover. As they approached the eastern wall, Mina pointed out a barely visible seam in the metal paneling. "There," she whispered. "Help me pry it open." Louis braced himself against the wall, his muscles straining as he and Mina worked to open the hidden door. With a soft hiss, it slid aside, revealing a dimly lit passage. They slipped inside, the cool air a stark contrast to the desert heat. As they moved through the narrow corridor, they could hear muffled voices ahead. Louis held up a hand, signaling Mina to stop. "Main power grid of the capital," a gruff voice said. "Once it's down, the negotiations will be thrown into chaos." Louis and Mina exchanged alarmed glances. The implications were clear. The extremists were planning to sabotage the diplomatic efforts by attacking the city's infrastructure. They continued deeper into the facility, carefully avoiding detection. As they passed by a laboratory, a conversation caught their attention. "The biological agent is nearly ready," a scientist reported. "It will incapacitate humans while leaving Iridians unaffected." Louis felt a chill run down his spine. This was worse than they'd imagined. A targeted biological weapon could make long-term human presence on Iridia impossible. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Louis grabbed Mina's arm, pulling her into a nearby storage closet. They pressed themselves against the wall, barely breathing as a guard passed by. In the confined space, Louis became acutely aware of Mina's proximity. Her scales were shifting rapidly, glowing with an intensity he'd never seen before. He could feel the heat radiating from her body, their faces mere inches apart. Mina's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of fear and something else, a longing that mirrored his own growing feelings. For a moment, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in this small, shared space. The moment was shattered by a familiar voice outside. "Ambassador Zork, the preparations are complete." Louis and Mina froze, listening intently. "Excellent," Zork's unmistakable voice replied. "Soon we'll rid Iridia of these human pests and restore our planet to its rightful state." As the voices faded, Louis and Mina looked at each other in shock. Ambassador Zork, working with the extremists. It explained everything. "We need to alert the authorities," Louis whispered. Mina nodded. "There's a communication terminal in the main control room. We can send an encrypted message from there." They made their way through the facility, narrowly avoiding detection several times. Finally, they reached the control room. While Mina worked on bypassing the security systems, Louis kept watch. "I'm in," Mina said after a tense few minutes, "sending the distress signal now." Just as she finished transmitting, alarms blared throughout the facility. Their presence had been detected. "Time to go," Louis said, grabbing Mina's hand. They raced through the corridors, the sound of pursuing guards growing closer. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with a group of armed extremists. Louis reacted instinctively, his combat training taking over. He charged forward, catching the first guard off guard with a powerful tackle. Using the Iridian's weapon as a club, he quickly incapacitated two more. Mina held her own, using her agility to evade attacks and strike back with precision. Together, they fought their way towards the exit. As they neared the outer door, a stray energy blast caught Mina in the side. She stumbled, crying out in pain. Without hesitation, Louis scooped her up in his arms, cradling her against his chest as he ran. They burst out into the harsh desert sun, the sounds of pursuit not far behind. Louis spotted a series of caves in the distance and made for them, his muscles burning with exertion. Inside the relative safety of the caves, Louis gently set Mina down, examining her wound. "It's not too deep," he said, relief evident in his voice. "But we need to stop the bleeding." As he tended to her injury, their faces drew close once again. Mina's scales shimmered with a soft, pulsing light. Louis found himself leaning in, their lips nearly touching. A distant explosion shook the ground, snapping them back to reality. They peered out of the cave to see Iridian military forces descending on the facility. "They got our message," Mina said, a smile spreading across her face. But their relief was short-lived. A high-speed transport vehicle burst from the facility, racing across the desert sands. "Zork," Louis growled. "He's getting away." Mina struggled to her feet, perseverance etched on her face. "We can't let him reach the capital. Who knows what backup plan he might have?" Louis nodded, his eyes scanning the area. He spotted an abandoned Iridian desert vehicle, half buried in the sand. "There's our ride." They sprinted to the vehicle, Louis helping Mina inside before jumping into the driver's seat. He studied the alien controls for a moment before figuring out the basics. "Hold on," he said, gunning the engine. The vehicle roared to life, kicking up a plume of sand as they took off in pursuit of Zork's transport. The chase was on, with the fate of human-Iridian relations hanging in the balance. Balance. As the vehicle crested a final dune, Louis spotted Zork's transport ahead, racing towards a massive Iridian sinkhole in the distance. "There!" Louis shouted, pointing at the fleeing ambassador's vehicle. Mina's eyes narrowed as she focused on their target. "We're gaining on him. But be careful, Louis. That sinkhole is unstable." Louis nodded, his heart made as he pushed their vehicle to its limits. The engines whined in protest as they closed the gap, sand spraying in their wake. Zork's transport screeched to a halt at the edge of the sinkhole, the ambassador and his extremist cohorts spilling out onto the crumbling terrain. Louis brought their vehicle to a stop, and he and Mina quickly disembarked, approaching their cornered quarry cautiously. "It's over, Zork," Louis called out, his voice carrying across the windswept expanse. "Surrender now." The Iridian ambassador's scales flickered with rage as he turned to face them. "You fool! You have no idea what you've done." Mina stepped forward, her stance firm despite her injury. "What we've done is stop you from destroying everything our people have worked for." Zork's hand moved to his belt, and Lewis tensed, ready for action. "I won't let you ruin Iridia with your human influence," the ambassador snarled. In a flash, Zork activated a device on his belt. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble and shift. "Look out!" Lewis yelled as cracks spiderwebbed across the terrain. The earth groaned and buckled, chunks of rock and sand sliding into the widening maw of the sinkhole. Lewis reacted instinctively, lunging for Mina as the ground gave way beneath her feet. His strong arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back from the brink. They stumbled away from the crumbling edge, Mina's scales flashing with gratitude and fear. The extremists scattered, abandoning Zork as they fled for safer ground. A low rumble filled the air, and Louis looked up to see a Iridian military transport descending from the sky. "Backups arrived," he said, a grim smile on his face. As the transport touched down, disgorging armed Iridian soldiers, Zork's expression twisted with desperation. He turned and ran, sprinting towards a field of towering crystal formations that jutted from the desert floor. Without hesitation, Louis gave chase. His legs pumped hard, eating up the distance between him and the fleeing ambassador. Behind him, he could hear Mina calling out, but the rush of blood in his ears drowned out her words. The crystal field loomed before them, a maze of translucent spires reflecting the harsh desert sunlight. Lewis ducked and weaved through the formations, sharp edges threatening to slice his skin with every movement. Ahead, Zork stumbled, his bulkier form less suited to the tight spaces. Suddenly, the ambassador whirled around, a Iridian energy weapon materializing in his hand. Lewis barely had time to dive behind a crystal as a bolt of energy crackled past, leaving a scorch mark on the formation. "You can't stop what's coming, human!" Zork shouted, firing wildly into the crystal maze. Lewis crouched low, his eyes scanning for an opening. He spotted a particularly tall crystal nearby, and an idea formed in his mind. Taking a deep breath, he broke cover, sprinting for the formation. Zork's weapon discharged again and again, but Louis' agility and the cover provided by the crystals kept him safe. With a powerful leap, he began scaling the towering crystal, its smooth surface providing little purchase for his hands and feet. The ambassador's eyes widened as he realized what Louis was attempting. He raised his weapon, taking aim at the climbing human, but he was too slow. Lewis reached the top of the crystal and launched himself into the air, his body silhouetted against the twin suns of Iridia. Time seemed to slow as he descended, his arms outstretched towards the stunned Zork. They collided with a thud, both tumbling to the ground in a tangle of limbs. The energy weapons skittered away across the sand as they grappled, each fighting for dominance. Zork's reptilian strength was formidable, but Lewis's combat training gave him the edge. He maneuvered himself atop the ambassador, pinning Zork's arms to the ground. "It's finished," Louis panted, his face inches from Zork's snarling visage. The sound of approaching footsteps signaled the arrival of Mina and the Iridian military. As they surrounded the pair, Louis felt a wave of relief wash over him. The immediate danger had passed, but as he met Mina's gaze, he realized their greatest challenges may still lie ahead. The Iridian soldiers quickly took Zork into custody, securing him and the other captured extremists. A commanding officer approached Louis and Mina, his scales shimmering with a mix of awe and respect. "We owe you a great debt," the officer said, bowing his head slightly. "Your actions have saved countless lives and preserved the peace between our peoples." Louis nodded, suddenly aware of the aches and fatigue settling into his body. "We did what we had to do. What happens now?" The officer's scales rippled with tenacity. "Now, we return to the capital. The council will want to hear of this directly from you both." As they boarded the military transport, Lewis felt Mina's hand brush against his. He turned to find her watching him, her eyes filled with a whirlwind of emotions. "Lewis," she began, her voice low, "what we did today, it changes everything." He nodded, acutely aware of the heat radiating from her body. the subtle shifts in her scale coloration. "I know," he replied softly, "but where do we go from here?" The transport lifted off, carrying them back towards the Iridian capital in an uncertain future. As the crystal field and sinkhole receded into the distance, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure in the desert was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would test not only their diplomatic skills, but also the growing bond between them. As the crystal field and sinkhole receded into the distance, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that their adventure in the desert was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would test not only their diplomatic skills, but also the growing bond between them. The journey back to the Iridian capital was tense but mercifully short. As they disembarked from the military transport, Louis and Mina were immediately ushered into a series of debriefings with Iridian officials. Hours passed in a blur of questions, reports, and hurried consultations. It was well past midnight when Louis finally stumbled back to his quarters, exhausted but unable to sleep. His mind raced with the implications of their discovery and the lingering memory of Mina's scales against his skin. A sharp knock on his door jolted him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Admiral Helena Reeves, her stern face lined with fatigue and concern. "Pack your bags, Carmichael," she said without preamble. "We're moving to high-security accommodations. The situation's escalated." Louis quickly gathered his belongings, following the Admiral through the winding corridors of the diplomatic complex. As they walked, Reeves filled him in on the latest developments. "The Iridian Council is in an uproar," she explained. "They're eager to solidify our alliance after the extremist plot, but there's opposition on both sides. We need to tread carefully." They arrived at a secure conference room where Mina and several high-ranking Iridian officials were already gathered. The air was thick with tension as Louis took his seat beside Mina, acutely aware of her presence. The head of the Iridian Council, a statuesque female named Zara, addressed the room. "In light of recent events, we propose an unprecedented joint scientific mission to a newly discovered planetary system on the fringes of our space." Murmurs rippled through the assembled group. Admiral Reeves leaned forward, her interest piqued. "A joint mission? With a mixed crew?" Zara's scales shimmered with affirmation. "Precisely. We believe this would demonstrate the strength of our alliance and open new avenues for cooperation." Louis glanced at Mina, seeing his own mix of excitement and apprehension mirrored in her eyes. The potential of such a mission was enormous, but so were the risks. Admiral Reeves considered the proposal carefully. "It's an intriguing idea, but we'd need to ensure compatibility between our species for long-term space travel. I propose a trial run to test this concept." The Iridian officials conferred briefly before agreeing. Zara turned her gaze to Louis and Mina. "Given your recent collaboration, we believe you two would be ideal candidates for this trial." Louis felt a rush of adrenaline. He nodded, meeting Mina's eyes. She gave him a small smile, her scales pulsing with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Louis and Mina underwent rigorous physical examinations and briefings on the modified Iridian research vessel that would serve as their testing ground. The ship had been hastily retrofitted to accommodate both species, a hybrid of human and Iridian technology. As they boarded the vessel, Louis couldn't help but feel a thrill of excitement. The interior was a marvel of engineering, seamlessly blending elements from both worlds. Sleek Iridian control panels stood alongside familiar human interfaces, creating a unique environment that felt both alien and oddly welcoming. Their first test came quickly. A simulated asteroid field appeared on the main view screen, a chaotic mass of tumbling rocks threatening to overwhelm their sensors. "Navigation systems are offline," Mina reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. "We'll have to pilot manually." Louis took the helm, his hands fitting naturally into the Iridian control mechanism. "Ready when you are," he said, flashing Mina a confident grin. Together they guided the ship through the virtual minefield. Louis's piloting skills complemented Mina's rapid calculations and sensor readings. They weaved through gaps barely wider than the ship, their movements so in sync it was as if they shared a single mind. As they cleared the asteroid field, Louis let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He turned to Mina, feeling a surge of pride and something deeper, more primal. Her scales were flushed with exertion and excitement, and for a moment he was tempted to reach out and touch them. The moment was broken by the ship's computer announcing the next phase of their trial. Initiating life support malfunction simulation, the emotionless voice intoned. Alarms blared as the ship's atmosphere began to thin. Lewis and Mina raced to the maintenance shaft, squeezing into the narrow space. The close quarters forced them into intimate proximity, their bodies pressed together as they worked to repair the simulated damage. Lewis reached past Mina to access a control panel, his arm brushing against a particularly sensitive patch of scales on her side. She let out a soft, involuntary trill, the sound sending a shiver down Louis' spine. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the simulation faded away, leaving only the electric current of attraction between them. With effort, they refocused on the task at hand, completing the repair just as the ship's computer announced the end of the simulation. They emerged from the maintenance shaft, both slightly flushed and avoiding each other's gaze. As they continued through the battery of tests, Louis couldn't shake the growing awareness of Mina, the grace of her movements, the subtle changes in her scale coloration, the way her eyes lit up when she solved a particularly challenging problem. He found himself looking for excuses to work closely with her, to experience that spark of connection again and again. Little did they know, their every interaction was being closely monitored and recorded. As they completed their final simulation, congratulating each other on a job well done, neither of them noticed the small, blinking camera hidden in the corner of the room, capturing their growing intimacy for an audience they never intended. Suspected. The real test was about to begin. As Louis and Mina disembarked from the simulation vessel, they were immediately greeted by Admiral Reeves and a contingent of Iridian officials. The Admiral's expression was a mix of satisfaction and urgency. "Excellent work, both of you," she said briskly. "But we don't have time to celebrate. We've just received reports of an asteroid on a collision course with Iridia. You're being deployed immediately." Louis and Mina exchanged startled glances. The transition from simulation to real-world crisis was jarring, but they quickly composed themselves. Within hours, they found themselves aboard an actual joint human-Iridian vessel, the HSS Concordia. The ship hummed with nervous energy as the mixed crew prepared for their first true mission together. As they left Iridian orbit, Louis couldn't help but marvel at the seamless integration of human and Iridian technology. The bridge was a testament to the collaboration between their species, with interfaces designed to accommodate both human and Iridian physiology. "Asteroid ETA, 72 hours, announced the ship's AI, its voice a blend of human and Iridian vocal patterns. Lewis took his position at the command console, while Mina occupied the science station. The rest of the bridge crew, a mix of humans and Iridians, looked to them for guidance. "All right, people," Louis addressed the crew, his voice steady and authoritative. "We've trained for this. Let's show what our two species can accomplish together." As they approached the asteroid, tensions aboard the ship rose. Human and Iridian crew members, still adjusting to each other's presence, worked side by side with terrifying nervousness. Louis noticed a human engineer struggling with a Iridian interface. Without hesitation, he called out to a nearby Iridian crewmate, "Zex, can you give Ensign Chen a hand with that console?" The Iridian nodded, his scales shifting to a helpful blue hue as he moved to assist. Lewis caught Mina's approving glance from across the bridge. Their moment of unity was short-lived. Suddenly, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as the lights flickered. "Power fluctuation detected," a Iridian technician called out. "Artificial gravity failing." The world seemed to tilt as gravity disappeared. Crew members who weren't strapped in began to float. Louis, acting on instinct, grabbed onto a fixed console with one hand. With the other, he reached out and caught Mina just as she was about to collide with a bulkhead. For a breathless moment, they were suspended in the zero-G, Louis's arm around Mina's waist, her scales pressed against him. He could feel the rapid beat of her hearts, smell the faint, alien scent of her skin. Their eyes locked, and Lewis felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the ship's malfunctions. The gravity returned as quickly as it had vanished, bringing them back to reality. Louis steadied Mina as they regained their footing, both of them acutely aware of the lingering contact. "Thank you," Mina said softly, her scales flushing a deep purple. Louis nodded, suddenly finding it difficult to speak. He cleared his throat and turned to address the crew. Status report. As the crew scrambled to assess the damage, the asteroid loomed large on the interface. But as they drew closer, something about it seemed off. Captain, Mina called out, her voice tense with excitement. These readings, they're not consistent with a natural formation. The asteroid appears to be partially hollow, with signs of artificial construction. Louis leaned over her console, their shoulders touching as he studied the data. Are you saying this is some kind of alien structure? Mina's scales rippled with affirmation. It appears so. This changes everything. Louis straightened up, his mind racing with the implications. He tapped his comm badge. All senior staff to the conference room immediately. As the gathered officers, human and Iridian alike, debated their next move, Louis found himself drawn to the viewport. The asteroid hung in space, no longer just a threat to be diverted, but a mystery to be unraveled. He felt Mina's presence beside him. What are you thinking? She asked. Louis turned to her, his expression resolute. I'm thinking we need to get a closer look. Prepare an away team. We're going in. As they suited up for the expedition, Louis couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to step into something far bigger than they had ever imagined. The unknown alien structure beckoned, promising answers and dangers beyond their wildest expectations. With a final check of his equipment, Louis stepped into the airlock, Mina and a mixed team of human and Iridian explorers at his side. As the outer doors opened, revealing the pitted surface of the asteroid, Louis took a deep breath. Let's make history, he said, and took the first step into the void. Unknown. As Louis's foot touched the asteroid's surface, a violent tremor shook the entire structure. Alarms blared inside their helmets, and Mina's voice crackled over the comm. Energy spike detected. It's not just an asteroid, it's activating. Before they could react, a blinding light engulfed them. When it faded, Louis found himself back on the bridge of the HS Concordia, disoriented and gasping. The rest of the away team materialized around him, equally confused. What just happened? Louis demanded, steadying himself against a console. Mina rushed to her station, scales flickering with urgency. The asteroid, it's gone, but I'm detecting multiple new contacts. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a chilling sight. Where the asteroid had been, a fleet of sleek alien vessels now hung in space. Their design was unlike anything Louis had ever seen, all sharp angles and pulsing energy fields. 7 large vessels, Mina reported, her voice tense. Unknown configuration. They're using some kind of advanced energy shielding. Our sensors can barely detect them. Louis' mind raced. This was no longer a simple asteroid interception mission. They were facing a potential first contact situation, or worse, an invasion. Red alert, he ordered. Shields up. Inform Admiral Reeves and the Iridian Council immediately. As the bridge erupted into action, Louis turned to Mina. We need a plan. Any ideas? Mina's scales rippled with concentration. The asteroid debris field. We could use it as cover to get closer, gather more information. Louis nodded. Good thinking. And if we could mask our energy signature somehow? Iridian stealth technology, Mina finished his thought. We could disperse our signature through the asteroid fragments. It might just work. Louis gave the order, and the Concordia began its careful approach. The tension on the bridge was palpable as they maneuvered through the debris field, inching closer to the alien fleet. Suddenly, Mina's console lit up. Energy surge from the lead ship. Before anyone could react, a beam of searing energy lanced out from the alien vessel. It caught the edge of the Concordia's shields, sending a shudder through the entire ship. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, and the lights flickered ominously. Multiple system failures? A Iridian officer called out. We're losing power. Louis gripped his chair as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Damage report. The ship lurched again, and Louis felt the sickening sensation of rapid decompression. Warning klaxons blared as emergency bulkheads slammed shut throughout the vessel. Hull breach in Section 4, Mina shouted over the chaos. We need to seal it off. Without hesitation, Louis and Mina raced from the bridge. They sprinted through corridors filling with acrid smoke, dodging panicked crew members and sparking conduits. As they reached the damaged section, a violent tremor shook the ship. Louis stumbled, and a piece of falling debris struck him hard. He felt a sharp pain in his side but pushed through it. Together, they managed to manually override the emergency systems, sealing off the breached section. As the last bulkhead slid into place, Louis sagged against the wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Mina turned to him, her eyes widening as she saw the blood seeping through his uniform. "You're injured." Louis tried to wave her off, but the world was starting to spin. "It's nothing. We need to get back to the bridge." Mina caught him as he stumbled. "The main medical bay is cut off. I'll have to treat you here." She eased him to the floor and began examining the wound. As she worked, Louis noticed her scales shifting to a deep, vibrant blue he had never seen before. "That color," he murmured, fighting to stay conscious. "What does it mean?" Mina paused, her hands gentle on his side. "It's concern and affection. Among my people, it's a very personal color." Their eyes met, and for a moment the chaos around them faded away. Despite the pain and danger, Louis felt a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with his injury. The moment was broken by another violent shudder of the ship. Mina finished her makeshift treatment using a combination of human and Iridian medical techniques that left Louis marveling at her adaptability. "We need to get back to the bridge," Louis said, gritting his teeth as he stood. "They're going to need us." As they made their way back, Louis's mind was already working on their next move. The alien fleet was still out there, and the Concordia was in no shape for a prolonged fight. They needed a plan, and fast. Little did he know the solution would come from an unexpected combination of his own knowledge and Mina's unique perspective. As they stepped back onto the bridge, the true nature of their adversary and its potential weakness was about to reveal itself. As Louis and Mina stepped onto the bridge, their minds raced with possibilities. The alien fleet loomed before them, a technological marvel that defied comprehension. "Captain, I have an idea," Mina said, her scales flickering with excitement. "We could use a modified version of our Iridian stealth technology to create a radiation pulse. It might disrupt their shielding." Louis nodded, his eyes gleaming with persistence. "Do it." The crew worked feverishly, human and Iridian expertise melding as they reconfigured the ship's systems. Mina's fingers flew over the console, inputting complex calculations. "Ready?" she announced, her voice taut with anticipation. Louis took a deep breath. "Activate the pulse." A surge of energy erupted from the Concordia, rippling through space like a silent thunderclap. The effect was immediate and breathtaking. The alien fleet's advanced shielding flickered and failed, revealing their true forms. Gas echoed across the bridge as the once invisible armada became fully visible. The ships were unlike anything they'd ever seen, sleek biomechanical marvels that seemed to pulse with life. But the pulse did more than just disable their shields. The alien vessels lost power, drifting aimlessly in the void. "Their entire technological network is disrupted," Mina reported, her scales shifting to a deep blue of excitement and concern. Louis's mind raced with the implications. "This is our chance. We need to board their flagship." He quickly assembled a mixed team of humans and Iridians, each chosen for their unique skills. As they prepared to embark, Louis turned to Mina. "I need you here," he said, his voice softening. "Your expertise with Iridian tech might be our key to interfacing with their systems." Mina nodded, her scales flushing purple. "Be careful," she whispered. The boarding party, clad in specially designed environmental suits, docked with the alien vessel. As the airlock hissed open, Louis led the way into the unknown. The ship's interior defied expectations. Corridors pulsed with an eerie organic light. Control panels responded to mere thoughts rather than physical touch. As they ventured deeper, they encountered no resistance, only silent, motionless forms of the alien crew, suspended in some form of stasis. At the heart of the ship, they discovered a chamber housing what appeared to be the main computer core. Louis approached, his diplomatic instincts kicking in. Using a combination of gestures and carefully chosen words, He attempted to communicate. To his amazement, the computer responded. Alien symbols flashed across holographic displays, slowly resolving into recognizable patterns. "My God," Lewis breathed. "They're not invaders. They're refugees." The computer revealed a startling truth. These aliens were an ancient offshoot of Iridian society, separated millennia ago by a catastrophic event. They had spent eons searching for their ancestral home, their advanced technology allowing them to traverse vast distances of space. As Lewis relayed this information back to the Concordia, a new crisis emerged. The radiation pulse had damaged critical life support systems. The alien refugees, still in suspended animation, were at risk of perishing. Mina's voice crackled over the comm, filled with urgency and inspiration. "I have an idea. We can use a combination of Iridian medical tech and human bioengineering to revive a select group. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to save them and establish direct communication." Louis didn't hesitate. "Do it. I'll be the one to make first contact." Despite protests from his team about his injury, Louis entered the alien stasis chamber. His heart raced as Mina initiated the revival process remotely. The first alien slowly stirred. Its eyes opened, focusing on Lewis with an intensity that made him catch his breath. In that moment of mutual recognition, Lewis saw the unmistakable resemblance to Iridians in the alien's features. Time seemed to stand still as human and alien regarded each other. Louis raised his hand in a gesture of peace, his diplomatic training kicking in despite the unprecedented nature of the situation. The alien mimicked the gesture, its movements slow and deliberate. Lewis felt a surge of hope. This was more than first contact. It was a reunion of long-lost kin across the vast expanse of space and time. Back on the Concordia, Mina monitored Louis' vital signs, her scales shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors, reflecting her tumultuous emotions. The crew watched in tense silence as Lewis began to establish the first peaceful communication with these long-lost cousins of the Iridian people. As more aliens awakened, the complexity of the situation grew. Louis found himself at the center of a delicate negotiation, balancing the immediate need to save the refugee fleet with the broader implications of this discovery for both human and Iridian societies. With Mina's steady support from afar, Louis navigated the intricate dance of interspecies diplomacy. Each word, each gesture, carried the weight of history and the promise of a shared future. As the hours stretched on, Lewis felt the fatigue of his injury and the strain of the mission. But he pressed on, driven by the knowledge that the success of this encounter could reshape the galaxy as they knew it. The alien leader, now fully revived, began to share the story of their exodus and long journey. Lewis listened intently, his palms sweating with the implications. As the tale unfolded, he realized that this was only the beginning of a much larger story, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. Lewis felt the weight of this revelation settle on his shoulders, knowing that the implications would ripple across both human and Iridian societies. As he processed this information, a sudden commotion erupted on the alien ship. Zara, the first awakened alien, stirred from her stasis pod, her eyes blinking rapidly as she adjusted to consciousness. Louis's heart raced as he approached her, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Hello," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're here to help." Zara's gaze locked onto Louis, her eyes widening with a mixture of fear and curiosity. She attempted to speak, but her words came out as a series of clicks and whistles. Lewis tapped his communicator, hoping against hope that the universal translator could decipher her language. To his amazement, fragmented words began to form. "Where? Who? You?" Louis smiled, relief washing over him. "I'm Lewis, captain of the human Iridian vessel Concordia. We've come to assist you." As more aliens began to stir, the complexity of the situation grew exponentially. Louis found himself at the center of a delicate negotiation, balancing the immediate need to save the refugee fleet with the broader implications of this discovery. Back on the Concordia, Mina's fingers flew across the control panel as she coordinated efforts to stabilize the life support systems on the refugee ships. Her innovative approach, combining Iridian and human technologies, proved successful in reviving more of the alien crew. "Captain?" Mina's voice crackled over the comm. "We've managed to stabilize life support on 3 of the 7 vessels, but we're detecting power fluctuations in the others. We need to act fast." Lewis nodded, even though Mina couldn't see him. "Understood. Keep working on it. I'm making progress with communication here." As the hours stretched on, Louis felt the fatigue of his injury and the strain of the mission. But he pressed on, driven by the urgency of the situation. He worked tirelessly to establish a basic form of communication with Zara, using a combination of gestures, simple diagrams, and the limited interface with the ship's computer. Meanwhile, the news of the long-lost Iridian offshoot caused a stir on both Earth and Iridia. The Concordia sent an urgent message to both planets, reporting their unprecedented discovery. The Iridian Council convened an emergency session, while Earth governments scrambled to assess the implications of this galactic family reunion. Admiral Helena Reeves, initially skeptical of the mission, now found herself spearheading efforts to provide additional support and resources to Louis and Mina's team. She dispatched a fleet of support vessels loaded with medical supplies and advanced communication equipment. As more aliens awakened, Louis faced the challenge of bridging the vast cultural and linguistic gap that millennia of separation had created. He drew on his diplomatic experience, using simple concepts and universal gestures to convey peaceful intentions. "We are friends," Louis repeated, pointing to himself and then to Zara. "Friends." Zara tilted her head, considering. Then slowly she raised her hand in a mirror of Louis's gesture. "Friends," she repeated, the word sounding strange but hopeful on her alien tongue. This breakthrough sent a ripple of excitement through both ships. The aliens, initially wary, began to respond positively to Louis's efforts, their curiosity about their long-lost Iridian cousins evident in their eager attempts to communicate. Mina's role became increasingly crucial as she worked to reconcile the biological differences between modern Iridians and their evolved cousins. Her expertise in Iridian physiology allowed her to identify key genetic markers that confirmed the shared ancestry. "Louis," Mina called over the comm, her voice tight with excitement. "I've found it, the genetic link. It's there, buried deep in their DNA. They really are our long-lost kin." This scientific breakthrough not only validated the aliens' claims, but also opened up new avenues for medical and technological advancements. Louis felt a surge of hope. This was more than first contact. It was a reunion of long-lost kin across the vast expanse of space and time. The alien refugees, now more fully awake and aware of their situation, began to share their own history through a series of holographic displays. Louis and the team watched in awe as the story of their exodus unfolded before their eyes. A massive solar flare, threatening to destroy all life on Iridia, forced their ancestors to flee. Using experimental technology, they embarked on a centuries-long journey through space, eventually evolving to adapt to their new environment. As Louis delved deeper into the aliens' history, he uncovered a startling revelation. The refugees possessed advanced terraforming technology developed over millennia of space travel. This technology, if shared, could revolutionize colonization efforts for both humans and Iridians. The discovery of this technology created a new diplomatic challenge. Louis realized he must navigate the complex web of interest between the refugees, Iridians, and humans, each of whom saw the potential benefits and risks of such advanced capabilities. "We need to proceed carefully," Louis said to Zara, struggling to convey the complexity of the situation. "Your technology, it could help many, but we must ensure it's used wisely." Zara nodded slowly, her alien features arranging themselves into what Louis hoped was an expression of understanding. "Together," she said, the word carrying the weight of possibility. "We learn together." As tensions rose over the potential sharing of technology, Louis found himself working closely with Zara. Their interactions, initially focused on bridging communication gaps, began to take on a more personal nature. Louis was fascinated by Zara's unique perspective, shaped by eons of space travel and adaptation. Mina, observing these interactions from afar, experienced a complex mix of emotions. Her scientific fascination with the aliens, conflicted with a growing sense of unease as she watched Louis and Zara's relationship develop. The situation reached a critical point when reports came in of a radical faction within the Iridian government attempting to seize control of the refugee ships. Louis, Mina, and their team found themselves caught in the middle of this power play. "We need a solution, fast," Louis said, his mind racing. "Something to show the benefits of cooperation, to prevent this from escalating into conflict." As he spoke, an idea began to form. A public demonstration of the refugees' terraforming technology on a barren moon in the Iridian system. It was risky, but it offered the best chance for a peaceful resolution. Louis shared his plan with Mina and Zara, watching their reactions carefully. Mina's scales shifted through a range of colors before settling on a determined blue. Zara's alien features were harder to read, but her posture suggested cautious agreement. "It's dangerous," Mina said, her voice tense, "but it might be our only option." Zara nodded slowly. "We will show. Trust must grow." As preparations for this crucial demonstration began, Louis and Mina found themselves working in close proximity once again. The intensity of the situation and the high stakes of their mission brought their unwillpowered feelings to the surface. In a rare moment of quiet, they stood side by side on the bridge, watching the stars streak by as the joint fleet, human, Iridian, and refugee ships, set course for the Iridian system. Louis turned to Mina, acutely aware of the challenges they'd face together and the uncertain future that lay ahead. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "I'm glad you're here." Mina's scales flushed a deep, vibrant blue. "So am I," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. As they approached their destination, the tension built. The fate of 3 species hung in the balance, and the upcoming demonstration could change the course of galactic history. Louis and Mina stood ready, their willpower unshaken, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead in this new chapter of interstellar diplomacy. As the joint fleet approached the Iridian system, the anticipation aboard the Concordia was palpable. Louis and Mina worked tirelessly at their stations, coordinating the final preparations for the terraforming demonstration. Their shared experiences had forged a bond between them that went beyond mere colleagues or even friends. "All systems are go," Mina reported, her scales shimmering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "The refugee ships are in position, and we've received clearance from Iridian control." Louis nodded, his eyes fixed on the monitor as a barren moon came into view. "That's our canvas," he said softly. "Let's hope this demonstration is enough to bring everyone together." The refugee ships moved into position around the moon, their massive terraforming machines descending to the surface. Louis, Mina, and a group of representatives from Earth and Iridia gathered in the Concordia's observation lounge to witness the event. Zara stood beside Louis, her alien features arranged in what he now recognized as an expression of anticipation. "We show new life," she said, her words still halting but filled with pride. As the demonstration began, the assembled group watched in awe, the machines whirred to life, kicking up plumes of moon dust as they bored into the surface. Within minutes, atmosphere generators activated, creating a shimmering bubble around the moon. "Incredible," breathed Admiral Reeves, her earlier skepticism completely evaporated. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this." The transformation continued at an astonishing pace. Engineered microorganisms were released into the newly formed atmosphere, kickstarting the process of soil formation. Patches of green began to appear on the surface, spreading rapidly across the once desolate landscape. Louis felt a surge of hope as he observed the reactions of the assembled delegates. The Iridian representatives whispered among themselves, their expressions a mix of wonder and cautious optimism. The human delegates were equally impressed, already discussing potential applications for the technology. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Mina's scales flashed a bright red as she rushed to a nearby console. "Unidentified vessel approaching at high speed," she reported, her voice tense. "It's not responding to hails." Louis's heart sank as he recognized the profile of the approaching ship. "It's a Iridian warship," he said grimly. "The radical faction must have made their move." Before anyone could react, the warship opened fire on the defenseless refugee vessels. Chaos erupted in the observation lounge as delegates scrambled for safety. Louis's military training kicked in immediately. "Mina, get everyone to the emergency shelters," he ordered. "I need to get to the bridge." As they raced through the corridors of the Concordia, Louis's mind whirled with potential strategies. They couldn't return fire without risking further escalation, but they needed to act fast to protect the refugee ships. On the bridge, Louis quickly assessed the situation. The refugee ships were scattering, their defense systems no match for the Iridian warship's advanced weaponry. He knew he had to think outside the box. "Mina," he called out, an idea forming in his mind. "The terraforming technology, could we use it to generate an electromagnetic pulse?" Mina's eyes widened as she grasped his plan. "It's possible, but we'd need to reconfigure the equipment, and we'd need to get close enough to the warship for it to be effective." Louis nodded grimly. "I'll handle that part. Get Zara and our engineering team working on the reconfiguration. We need to move fast." As Mina coordinated with the refugee ships, Louis made his way to the shuttle bay. He knew what he had to do, even if the thought of it made his palms sweat. "Captain, what are you doing?" Mina's voice crackled over the comm as Louis prepped a small shuttle for launch. "Buying us time," he replied, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "I'm going to play decoy while you get that pulse ready." "Louis, no!" Mina protested, her scales shifting to a deep purple of concern. "It's too dangerous." "We don't have a choice," Louis said firmly. "Just be ready with that pulse. And Mina, be careful." With that, Louis launched the shuttle, piloting it directly into the path of the approaching warship. His heart pounded as he weaved through the debris of the ongoing battle, drawing the Iridian ship's fire away from the refugees. From the Concordia's bridge, Mina watched with a mixture of admiration and terror as Louis's shuttle danced through space, narrowly avoiding volleys of weapons fire. Her fingers flew over the console, coordinating with Zara and the engineering team as they raced to reconfigure the terraforming equipment. "Almost there," Zara reported, her alien voice tense with concentration. "Need more time." Mina's scales flashed with frustration and fear as she watched Louis's shuttle take a glancing hit. "Hurry," she urged. "We're running out of time." Just as the warship locked onto Louis's shuttle with its main weapons, Mina saw the signal she'd been waiting for. "Now!" she shouted, activating the electromagnetic pulse. A ripple of energy burst from the moon's surface, expanding rapidly through space. It engulfed Louis's shuttle in the attacking warship, causing both to go dark. For a heart-stopping moment, there was silence on all channels. Then, mercifully, Louis's voice crackled through the comm. "Concordia, this is Louis. The warship's weapons are disabled. We did it." A cheer went up on the bridge, but Mina couldn't join in. Her scales were still a deep purple of concern as she monitored Louis's vital signs, waiting anxiously for his shuttle to be retrieved. As the immediate danger passed, the true impact of what had transpired began to sink in. The Iridian Council, having witnessed both the incredible potential of the refugee technology and the lengths Louis and his crew had gone to protect it, officially extended an offer of welcome to their long-lost kin. The Earth representatives, seeing an opportunity for unprecedented galactic cooperation, proposed the formation of a tri-species alliance. As formal negotiations began, Louis found himself at the center of a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. Hours later, exhausted but elated, Louis made his way to the observation deck. He found Mina there, her gaze fixed on the transformed moon below. As he approached, she turned to him, her scales shimmering with a kaleidoscope of colors he'd never seen before. "Louis," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "I thought, when your shuttle went dark, I feared." Louis stepped closer, suddenly acutely aware of the short distance between them. "I'm here, Mina," he said softly. "We did it. Together." As they stood there, the adrenaline of recent events still coursing through their veins, Louis felt the last of his reservations crumble away. He looked at Mina, really looked at her, and saw not an alien being, but a partner, a friend, and something more. "Mina," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to tell you something."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.